When looking at where Milan was just over a decade ago, it's shocking just how unrecognizable they have become. Hey there, I'm Adrian from Rabona TV, and let's take a closer look at just how Milan has ended up with 8 different managers and 3 different owners in 5 fast seasons. First, some reflection. In the 90s, the Serie A was booming, with AC Milan as their poster child. That decade saw them win 2 European Cups, adding to the title they won back in 1989 as well. They're one of the few teams that can say they won back-to-back European Cup titles, doing so in '89 and then again in 1990. Once we hit the 2000s, Milan was still a giant in world football, boasting some of the world's best players, naturally. Names like Clarence Seedorf, Andrea Pirlo, Paolo Maldini, Alessandro Nesta, Pippo Inzaghi, Andriy Shevchenko, Kaká, and the list goes on and on. All of them donned the rossoneri, and they came close to winning 3 European titles in the span of 5 years. Liverpool, of course, got in the way of adding the 2005 Champions League title to their triumphs from 2003 and 2007. Milan was a bona fide giant in the game, but their aging core was starting to show signs of wear following their 2007 Champions League title. In 2010, after a middling season under Leonardo, in which the rossoneri finished 3rd, Milan brought in Cagliari manager Maxi Allegri. At this time, Milan hadn't won a Scudetto since 2004, and Allegri was tasked with changing that. Thanks to some investment on the likes of Zlatan Ibrahimovic, Kevin Prince Boateng, Mario Yepes, Socrates, Robinho, and later Mark van Bommel, Allegri delivered the Scudetto. Following the 2010-2011 title, however, so began the mass exodus and the loss of some of Milan's most recognizable faces from the dressing room. It started with Andrea Pirlo departing in 2011. Then, 1 year later in 2012, Seedorf, Inzaghi, Nesta, and Gattuso all leave, legends of the club. Van Bommel, another experienced player, was a loss as well. In 2013, Ambrosini left the club, and he had been there since 1995. Of course, these players were all long in the tooth and well past their prime, but their presence at the club was much more than just the quality they added on the field. When you lose players like this, you lose leaders. You lose the veterans that would run through brick walls for the badge. You lose players that will ensure everyone's work rate is up to snuff in the dressing room. And it would get worse from there. Let's transition into the financial aspects of Milan's fall from grace. To start, it doesn't help the clubs in Italy that most of them do not own their own stadiums, with an exception to that rule being Juventus, meaning that most of the clubs have to pay a yearly lease, which cuts down their income from ticket sales. This is just an aside, as it explains why even top Serie A clubs make far less than other European elites, and adds some context to the recent news that you may have heard regarding the 2 Milan clubs wanting to build their own stadium, the municipal council in Milan willing to sell the San Siro to the Milan clubs, etc., etc. So, Silvio Berlusconi, a man who needs no real introduction as the former PM of Italy, purchased Milan in the mid-80s while they were verging on bankruptcy, and helped oversee an incredible 25-year span in which they won 5 European Cups, many Scudetti, and had world-beating teams such as the Immortals, who played under Arrigo Sacchi. Well, as the recession hit in 2007, his family's company that owned Milan, Fininvest, started to take heavy losses, culminating in 2013's losses of 485.9 million euros. In reaction to this, Silvio's daughter, Marina Berlusconi, who is the current chairwoman of Fininvest Holding, began to scale back the investment that was being put into the club as it was starting to affect the family fortunes. So with this in mind, and with PSG, a newly minted club that was on the hunt for silverware and players, when the Parisians offered big money for Zlatan and Thiago Silva, Milan accepted the deal. After being forced into accepting the millions made for Ibra and Silva, not to mention offloading the massive wages they demanded, Milan lost 2 more giants in their squad. Perhaps the Berlusconis would tell you they were forced into accepting the deals to ease the financial pressure on the club, but it was the beginning of a trend that would make itself evident in the years to come. A lack of investment in the squad as star players headed for the exit. You had this level of quality leaving, and only this level of quality coming in. Thiago Silva and Zlatan Ibrahimovic were elite players in their respective positions, while the reinforcements that were brought in to replace them were naturally regressions in quality. On top of that, elite players attract better talent to clubs, and with those 2 gone, it began to be harder and harder for Milan to bring in world-class players with less money to invest and less quality in the dressing room. After this, Milan fans staged a mock funeral for their club as they could see the direction they were heading in. If only they knew what was to come. Perhaps they did, actually, with the funeral. It's now easy to see why Allegri struggled at Milan after his initial success in his debut season. During the 2013-14 season, with Milan floundering in 11th place, he was sacked in January of 2014. Though he was blessed with the best squad in the country during his time at Juventus, his 5 Scudetti, 4 Italian Cups, and 2 Super Cups will certainly have felt like some sort of vindication after his Milan dismissal. But back to financials. A false sunrise came by way of Chinese investor Li Yonghong. But there were major issues almost from the get-go, with their financial plan consisting of hedge fund investments and, well, a lot of undelivered promises. After the new owners failed to deliver on 2 payment installations and AC Milan were headed towards financial doom, Elliott Management, who helped broker the sale of Milan to their Chinese investors by providing Li Yonghong with a loan, took legal action against them and later ownership of the club. Then, former Arsenal chief executive Ivan Gazidis was brought in to take control of the club's finances on December 1st, 2018. But the financial security came at a cost on the pitch. As we have seen more and more lately, the turnaround in a club's financial situation is celebrated by the board and used as a sort of whataboutism when fans question just what on earth is happening on the pitch with their squad. The two can, in some cases, go hand in hand, but success is never born out of instability, unless you look at the anomaly that is Chelsea, who, even when they seem to be in disarray at times, they still manage to win silverware. For Milan, that hasn't been the case, as the instability since Allegri's sacking has cost them dearly. Part of the difference between Chelsea and AC Milan, though, is that Chelsea invest a lot in improving their squad. You could argue that only one of the managers that followed Allegri were given a fighting chance to instill their style of play and to truly build on a project, and that was Gennaro Gattuso. But even calling that an opportunity to build is somewhat of a stretch. So, after Allegri, former player Clarence Seedorf took on a caretaker role from January until June, moving them up 3 spots in the standings to an 8th place finish. He was sacked, another former player, Pippo Inzaghi, took the reins next, and he almost lasted an entire calendar year, taking control for the entirety of the 2014-15 season, which wasn't a great success either, as Milan finished in 10th. Next, yet another former Serie A player in Sinisa Mihajlovic was given a shot for the 2015-16 season, and things were starting to look up under him, or at least they looked like an improvement in comparison to the past 2 seasons, as Mihajlovic got Milan as high as 6th, but with 6 matches to go, he was relieved of his duties, and Milan dropped to 7th with Christian Brocchi in charge for just half a dozen matches. Vincenzo Montella. He became the 2nd longest to manage Milan since 2014, as he was able to hold on to his job for 64 matches from July of 2016 until November of 2017. During the 16-17 season, he improved by 1 place in the standings, finishing in 6th, but also managed to get a shootout victory over Juventus in the Supercoppa, Milan's first trophy in 5 years. But then again, the aforementioned Chinese investors came, spent a fortune over the summer on an almost entirely new team, and with less than a 50% winning record, Montella was sacked after just 11 matches. And so, once again, Milan went with their failing MO of hiring former players to try to bring glory to the club and bringing in Gennaro Gattuso during the 2017-18 season. Now, while Gattuso only lasted for about a season and a half, you could argue that Milan looked best under him in comparison to the other managers that followed Allegri. Or at the very least, as I'm sure there will be those that didn't like the look of Gattuso's Milan, at the very least, you could accept that they looked like they had some fight in them, a trademark of their manager during his playing career. But by the time the 2018-19 season was coming to a close, before it finished, it was confirmed that Gattuso wouldn't continue as Milan's manager in the 1920 season. Part of the reason why he was leaving was down to Gazidis deeming the lack of UCL football a massive setback in the club's reinvigoration. They needed those funds, which they would have been banned from either way due to financial fair play restrictions. So, manager number 6 since Allegri had left in early 2014 had bitten the dust, and former Sampdoria manager Marco Giampaolo was entering the fight, coming in fresh off of a, I guess, decent season with Sampdoria. It started well, but tailed off towards the end for a 9th place finish. Now, whether he was an upgrade on Gattuso or not as far as managerial ability is concerned, it's hard to say, as he was barely given a shot at rectifying things for Milan. The 7th manager lasted just 7 competitive matches, all of which were in the Serie A after Milan were banned from the Europa League. So, with 9 points from 7 matches, Giampaolo was let go for Stefano Pioli. This was met with plenty of resistance from Milan fans, as Pioli has achieved nothing, really, in his 16-year career as a manager. He looked okay as Inter Milan's manager, though that run ended poorly, but beyond that, beyond Pioli's uninspiring record as a manager, the real reason for discontent among the fans was the fact that yet again the rug had been pulled out under a Milan manager. 7 matches is not enough of a barometer for any manager, and slow starts are to be expected, especially for a squad like Milan's, which is constantly being chopped and changed. When he was dismissed, Milan were just 3 points behind rivals Roma, who occupied 5th place. So while Pioli could steady the ship a little bit, it seems as if Milan are on a rotating conveyor belt, spinning in circles around the same mistakes that they continue to make over and over. There were no real plans for succession at the club, as far as ownership, at the board level, and on the pitch as well. So in closing, Milan were too interested in winning in the present and hanging on to the players who had brought them glory in the past, in order for them to see that their own doom was just around the corner due to their lack of a plan of succession. Instability from a revolving door of managers that never seem to be quite up to snuff, players that fall far from the mark of the elite that used to be in their locker room, and complete financial mismanagement all have led to where Milan find themselves now. A shadow of their glorious past and nowhere near the Immortals that they once were. Thanks for watching, everyone. I hope you enjoyed this look at what's wrong with Milan and how this team went from amongst the elites to 8 managers since 2014, 3 different owners, and UEFA bans due to financial mismanagement. If you enjoyed this video and want more from Rabona TV, hit that subscribe button. Otherwise, thanks for watching, and I'll catch you later. Peace.